In this special lesson, I'm going to share with you the why, when, and how of moving into the net in your singles play so that you can take over the net, win more points, and win more matches. So why should you move forward closer to the net? There's two main reasons. Number one, the closer you get to the other side of the court, the more angles you have to work with, and geometry becomes more and more your friend. What I mean by that is the further away you are from the other side, the less angles you have to work with because the net is in the way. You have to lift the ball to get over the net and then have it fall onto the other side. But when you get close to the net, you can start to hit directly at your opponent's side of the court, which means you can start to target angles and different spots on the court that are totally unavailable to you from further back. So the closer you get in, the more offensive advantage you have. The second big reason why it's a good idea to close forwards is it takes time away from your opponent. And the less time they have, the more rushed they'll be, the more mistakes they'll make, and the more you'll be in control of the flow of the point and the flow of the match. The closer you get, the more panicked they'll be, the more they feel like, oh man, I've got to hit a great shot. And that a lot of times leads to more mistakes and also setting you up because you're rushing them and making it more difficult for them to hit a quality shot. Now let's talk about the when. The timing of when you decide to close forwards could completely make or break your ability to win points. If you go at the wrong time, you actually give the benefit to your opponent instead of it being with you. There's two main times during a point that you want to consider closing forwards. The first time is when your opponent hasn't really given you a shot that's drawing you forwards, but you've put them under enough pressure by hitting a really wide shot or a really high and deep shot. You've made them uncomfortable and you see that they're in trouble, and that's a prime opportunity to close forwards because as they're stretching and reaching for that difficult shot, you have the opportunity to dramatically improve your position on the court and then be in position to just totally close out the point on the very next shot, as opposed to just standing back and waiting and watching and being passive and being reactive and waiting for their weak shot to come back. You could already be up there and take the ball out of the air and finish the point in your favor. The second big time that you want to close forwards is when your opponent hits you a short, weak ball. And maybe there wasn't any sign or reason for them to hit it, they just mishit the shot or they didn't hit the quality shot that they wanted to. Anytime you feel yourself taking a step or two inside the baseline to get your opponent's shot, that's a prime opportunity for you to just use that momentum to continue forwards, take time away from your opponent, give yourself more angles and opportunities to be offensive, and really pressure them and take matters into your own hand. Now let's talk about the how. How do you execute your close up to the net? And positioning is the thing we're going to focus on here because it's critical. If you stand too close to the net, then you leave yourself very vulnerable for defensive shots. And you should expect defensive shots because you're taking time away from your opponent by closing forwards. You're rushing them, you're pressuring them, you're putting them under a lot of duress. And so you should expect a lob. And so if you go all the way up to the net and say, oh sweet, I'm going to put the ball away, and you're like right up against the net, you're leaving too much open court and you're vulnerable to defense. So you want to find a spot on the court that's not too far away. Anywhere back close to the service line, you're too far back to really take advantage of angles. But if you're right up against the net, then you're also leaving yourself vulnerable. So my suggestion is, in general, you should be about 2 steps inside the service line or so as a good starting point. If you see your opponent float up an easy shot, then close in fast and take it as close to the net as you can. But from that position, you can also cover defense if your opponent lobs. Lastly, in terms of width, you want to position yourself on the same side of the court that the ball is on. So if you come up to the net and you hit your previous shot over to the right corner, you want to be about 2 or 3 feet over to the right side of the center. Don't stand in the center of the courts because it leaves a big chunk of court open down the line for your opponent to pass you. You want to put yourself in the middle of their 2 possible passing shots so you cover as much of the court as possible and you pressure them as much as you possibly can. So hopefully this gives you a step-by-step blueprint to follow to safely come forward to the net, pressure your opponent. It's an exciting play, it's a fun play. It really puts you in the driver's seat, makes you really aggressive and offensive. And so put these things into action and I promise you, you'll have more success and win more points and have more fun in your tennis matches.